welcome into episode 9 of All Things Nerdy with Nate and Joe. I am Nate, that's Joe. Today we have a really cool and exciting topic. We got an industry expert with us to talk about the fun and exciting world of board games. We've talked about it once before. We talked kind of about the history and where board games came from and the differences of them and all of that. And today we're going to be talking about more how they're made and some differences between them as well, and more modern take, and well, just overall like what Dustin has to add to our podcast. But again, I'm Nate, host of this, and then we got Joe.
Yep, and I'm Joe. But without further ado, Dustin, talk nerdy to us.
Yeah, so I'm Dustin Wessel. I work in board games, which was a job I didn't know existed until 2020 when I was looking for a career change. Been a board gamer all my life. All of like my fondest memories as a kid are playing Monopoly with my friends, or Risk, or kicking somebody's butt on Risk. Sorry, I didn't really know that there were real games out there beyond that until probably just past college, when I saw some people at an airport, of like all things, busting out a game of Pandemic, and I stopped and I was like, what is this strange thing on this table at this airport? And so asked them, and they were like, oh, it's Pandemic. And I was like, what does that mean? And so they took 10 or 15 minutes out of the game and they were explaining it to me. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. How does one get a hold of such a thing? And that's when I realized that like board game shops, or like comic/board game shops, are a thing. And that really, that was far too long ago now. Was it probably 15, 16, 17 years ago now? And it's been a journey ever since. I now own somewhere around 400 or 500 games that kind of fluxes up and down as I like, trade or sell or buy. And now that I'm doing conventions and stuff, like I will come home with a haul of like 20 new games to just add to my collection and be like, I don't know where to put any of this stuff because I've run out of space.
I do want to point out for anybody watching, Dustin, can you show that is not a digital background?
This is not a virtual background. I can pull anything off the shelf that you'd like if you want me to. I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna leave that guy right there because that's one of the games that I'm working on right now. So. But yes, that's a real background. That is not a picture of something. It's also my like interim space. This is definitely not what it would look like at my house when I buy a house, but we're renting right now, so it's on like metal sheet, but it works. Yeah. And then let's see. The pandemic hit in 2020. I was working at a theme park that I won't mention in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
A couple. There's still you could guess.
Yeah, there's a couple.
There's a few in Orlando, Florida. And so I was, sitting in my house just like everybody else was doing in 2020, going, I'm not passionate about what I'm doing necessarily anymore. What else is out there? And the answer just kept coming back to, well, I really like board games. I didn't know what anybody could do in board games besides, design them and publish them. So I went on Indeed, of all places, and just like put a board game and saved a search. And a few months later, something popped up that this company was looking for a customer experience professional. Yeah, so I interviewed. I ended up having a lot in common with the owner of the company. We both grew up in the Disney system. Him through Marvel, me through Disney. And yeah, we just kind of clicked, and the rest is history. So for the last 3 years, I've been in the industry space and doing a whole bunch of just different things, because most board game companies are going to be smaller, in the realm of anywhere from single person up to like a dozen, maybe 20 people, and then you get to the giants in the industry. So your Asmodees, who owns all of these little conglomerate places, like they're a massive conglomerate that owns a bunch of different publishers, your Ravensburgers, your Hasbros, and those kind of things. So other than that, those people employ hundreds, if not more people. But,
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, when they hear you say you own 400 games and stuff like that, my first thought is like, going back to before, I was a big time board gamer because I am as well, although my background is not as cool as yours. We also have a massive collection. I'm going to have to put my old house background up here at some point. But anyways, like I used to believe like Risk, hey, fantastic game. If you want to spend all day making fun of your buddies because you're kicking their butt, Risk is a good one, but it does take all day. But you're so used to the Sorries, the Monopolies, and lives, things like that. If you're like, what else is there? Just walk into a board game shop, and
Yeah.
it is a local game shop will open your eyes quickly to how many different styles of board games there are.
And what I found to a shop, right? All these FLGSs, which just stands for Friendly Local Game Store, fits that to a T. They are friendly, and then for the most part, they are locally owned just by passionate people in the space. So if you walk in there with no knowledge of what the hell a real board game is, because all you've ever played is like a Risk or a Monopoly or a Sorry or an Uno or any of those kind of things. If you walk in and you go, I'd like to try something, but this is what I know. I know Uno, I know Skippo, I know those kind of games. There will be 2 or 3 people dying to help you and be like, oh, you like that? Here, this is a great entry point. You like Risk? You like area control? Great. Here's a great game like this. And to try and get you into a space where you're going to feel comfortable because you've played it before, but want to come back for more. Obviously, like as a business, you want people to come back and buy more shit. So the better they are at guiding you in those right directions, the better. So.
Yeah, so we have a store here local to us, and I remember like I walked into the store for the first time, and I was like, "Wow, there's so many games." And instead of sitting there reading like, "What is this? What is this?" I went up to the person, and they were very friendly. Like, "Hey, welcome. If you need help, let me know." Right? I was like, "Yeah, I do actually. Tell me about your favorite board games that we have here." Little did I know the conversation that I was stepping into, because like 30 minutes later, we had it narrowed down to like 3. And they're like, I love this one. I love this one. I love this one. I was like, well, I can't decide. And they're like, I'll give you X percentage off if you want to just buy all 3. I was like, I'm in. You got me.
Yeah, that's how they get you.
How many games do you own now, Nate? I mean, I assume not close to 400, but
Me and Steph, we probably own close to 100, something like that. I don't work in the industry. This is just like pastime games. But I also I'm a big MTG person, Dungeons and Dragons person. So like I have a lot of those things that fill my space as well. So like from an MTG standpoint, I have way more than I should. But that's where I'm at with it. But it is like just going to an LGS. It's so much fun.
So Dustin, when earlier you were showing us like your background was not a digital background, and you picked that game up, you said you were working on it. Can you tell us like what that means?
Sure. So for the past 18 to 24 months, we've been working on this game called Sally Faye's Strange Nightmares. Here's another copy of it right here. I have a few copies laying around. This was just on Kickstarter, let's see, all of March. So basically it launched February 28th. And I think we reached our funding, like the end of it cut off on the 28th or something like that of March. But that's a little bit further down the line. 2 years ago, we were approached by this company that said, hey, listen, we have this IP. It's called Sally Face. The creator is interested in making a board game. Are you interested in making it? And 2, like what sort of concepts do you have around that space? And so we pitched them a couple of different ideas. What we usually do is we pitch a low, medium, high, because there's just such a wide variety in the board game space. So when we say like a low concept, it's cards in a box, so something a little bit more simpler. And cards in a box does not have to be simple. Like MTG is cards in a box. That is not a simple game. No, but Uno is also cards in a box, and that is something that you can teach in 30 seconds. So we'll pitch something like that. We'll pitch something mid-tier where it's dice, cards, maybe some boards, and then we'll pitch the big guys, right? And you actually can't see them right now, but let me the big boys, something like this top shelf here, where it's like Frosthaven, Gloomhaven,
Gloomhaven.
My Father's Work, those sort of things, where they're definitely heavy, meatier games that take hours and hours of playtime. And yeah, we'll kind of pitch it back to them and say, what kind of game do you want? And the creator, Steve Gabry, was looking for something that plays in about an hour. And that's something that really just felt like it captured the essence of the video game that he created. And so over the course of 18 months or so, we did a couple of design passes. Steve was intimately involved with it as the creator of the video game. He also helped create the board game. And yeah, kind of bouncing back different iterations before we really landed on the type of game that felt right. So Sally Face is a episodic video game where you're playing as a single character and you're trying to solve mysteries. You're solving puzzles, and you're uncovering this darkness in and around his apartment in his town. And so what we landed on was, okay, that's cool. That's a solo adventure. What if we made this co-op so that you and your friends can get involved, but still sort of do the same puzzle solving, mysteries, and all this sort of stuff? And then the next question was, we want this game to be replayable. So solving puzzles doesn't necessarily work, because once you've solved a puzzle, it's easy to go back. So how do you add that aspect to it, but make it something that is infinitely replayable? So we landed on dice, right? And rolling dice and matching symbols. So while you're not actually using your brain power to solve a mystery and a puzzle, you are rolling dice and using your actions to allocate those dice to specific things to give that same sort of experience. But yeah, it was very important to us. So it takes, you come up with the concept. It takes a few months to hammer out what that concept is. You come back to the table. You get friends. You get play testers. You get people to give you feedback on the game. That at that point is most likely not good. It takes iteration after iteration to get to a place where everybody's incredibly happy. And then you end up with a game that you're incredibly satisfied with, that you're ready to go and put on Kickstarter, or release, through pre-orders and just go to a retail release. It all just kind of depends on the publisher at that point, what the decision is.
So if somebody wanted to get a hold or support Sally Face, what would they do?
Yeah, right now they could just go to maestromedia.com. There is a notify me button. We are tomorrow. We went through Kickstarter. We went through that Kickstarter process. We are delivering files right now to the manufacturer to print the game and do all that kind of fun stuff. But we are next week launching a pre-order store in BackerKit, which is a pledge manager for Kickstarter. There's a whole ecosystem surrounding it. All that people need to know is starting next week on maestromedia.com, there will be a page that takes you to a place where you can pre-order Sally Face Strange Nightmares. And when I say pre-order, it's going to be 6 or 8 months before the game delivers. But you are welcome to join the journey. Now, you missed the cool part of the journey. During the Kickstarter, it was this massive party where we were doing social goals and getting people involved on Twitter and on Instagram. We had, there's 120 different characters in the game, and we asked people to draw all 120 of the characters in their own style, and then post them online, right? We asked 10 people to scream at a lake, and post that online. We just asked for a whole bunch of. We did make a pastry, a Sally Face pastry. Eat a bologna sandwich, because that's a thing that happens in the game. So all this fun stuff that we could just interact with. Now, we missed some of that. We were doing live streams and talking about it. So all that's kind of over for Sally Face. But we've got other games in the pipeline. And in fact, we actually just announced a brand new game yesterday that will be launching on Kickstarter in September. and it is a massive IP. And so we're going to be doing a ton of different activations in September during that Kickstarter. And that one is called Hello Kitty Day in the Park.
Let's go. Some Hello Kitty action.
Okay.
That's right. It's going
I
to be a
didn't,
touch.
I didn't realize that much went into like a game launch. Like
it's incredible, right?
intense.
Like Hello Kitty, we have been working on for. See, I started that one just over a year ago, I think. And we obviously like with a massive IP like Hello Kitty, run by this massive company. There's a lot of checks and balances and a lot of good back and forth. But we've been working on that Hello Kitty game for about 12 months, maybe a little bit more. And actually just got to play it in person for the first time. We use something, since we are a remote company, like our founder is in California, I'm in Pennsylvania. Our director of marketing is in France. So we have people all over the world. We usually end up playing on Tabletop Simulator, which is just a digital way of playing a tabletop game. But I got to play it in person last week for the first time. And it does bring a whole new dynamic to the game when you're able to do it and sit down around a table with somebody.
I think that's the beauty of a lot of board games, right? It's not just the game itself; it's the people you're playing with.
Right. I think I said this, and you posted it up. But it is all about the interactions, right? I would much rather play a mediocre game with fabulous people like you than a great game with just some miserable jerks that hate life.
Yeah.
So it is all about the table dynamic.
Mm-hmm. So anytime I'm invited to like a board game night, I always bring like a large selection of games. And I'm always like, look, this game is fantastic, but it's one of those games that's only as fun as the people you got to play it with, right? Like the game itself is set up to be a social interaction. If you are not having fun, if you are not laughing, nobody's going to enjoy this game.
Yeah.
And so I always lead with that. And that, like you said, that's very important, right? I'd rather play with people that are going to cut up and have fun versus a rules lawyer who's like, no, you can't do that.
That's right.
Yeah. Nate, the politician over here, going to convince everyone to do anything, though.
Yeah. We don't have
how did Nate win all the games? I don't know. I really don't know how that happened.
That is, I will. I am very conscious when I go to somebody's house or host a game night of anything that I do bring multiple different games, so that there is the option, right? And you'll have some friends who are gamers, some friends who are new, and being able to be like, okay, well this game's heavy, right? This is a medium weight game. It's chunky. It takes a while. It's going to take 20 or 30 minutes to set up and explain the rules. We're going to play for a few hours.
Like Dead of Winter. That's one of those. I tell when I bring Dead of Winter, I'm like, hey, it's a blast. It's a ton of fun, right? But we're sitting there for hours.
Yeah, so John Gilmore, the designer of Dead of Winter, is the developer of Hello Kitty.
Oh, wow. I love Dead of Winter. I think it's a great game.
Designed by Roberta Taylor, who has been fantastic to work with. She's best known for probably Creature Comforts. And mine is signed.
Ooh, that's
she also did the Red Burnous, Octopus Garden, incredible designer. And so her and John have been working very closely together to get that game up and running. And very excited. But yeah, so John is the designer of Dead of Winter. Now he's creating. He went from zombies to cats. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Hello Kitty is not a cat. She's a little girl who just presents as a cat. That's good to know. But yeah, so he went from zombies to Hello Kitty.
That feels like the proper transition, right? Like if I was to think,
I think that's the natural transition.
Yeah, if I was thinking of a timeline, that's how I would draw it out. So
I have some kids that'll probably be begging for that one for sure.
So if you were going to a friend's house, what are 3 games you would grab right now?
Depends. If I'm coming to your house, I'm grabbing very different games than if I'm going to Joe's house.
I'd say you're coming to my house.
That's true.
What are you grabbing? What are you picking up?
All right. So if I'm coming to your house, I'm grabbing. Hold on, I'm gonna grab probably Wingspan. I think you'd really dig that.
Yep.
Looking around here, Planet. which has been a recent favorite.
I love playing it. It's a good
Okay,
time.
all right, there we go.
So the first time I ever played it, the whole group was laughing at me and making fun of me. They're like, "Nate's an idiot. What's happening?" Then at the end, we counted up points, and I stopped them. They're like, "What happened?"
And then I would definitely want to bring. I just got back from a game insiders convention. It's called the Gathering of Friends. So it's an invite thing where designers and publishers and industry insiders all get to go up to play games together for a week. And we played a bunch of really good games, but I would definitely bring one of those games that I just played, either Hooky or Sides or Mission Control. And they're all more on the party aspect, or like with Mission Control, you literally have to shout at each other because one person is playing as an astronaut whose ship has just basically exploded in orbit. And then everybody else is playing as, like, one's Houston Mission Control, one is like Bangalore Mission Control, one is like, I forget, somewhere in Germany, Mission Control. And so you have to like communicate very quickly as you are problem solving what is happening to this one person. So I think it'd be a lot of fun to play with you, Nate, because you get very animated. Sides is another one of those sort of party games where you're trying to get them to very quickly guess a word. And you can only do that by giving them other words that start with specific letters and stuff like that. So again, it's a party game where you're shouting and you're quickly racing through these things. So again, Nate, something that'd be really fun to play with you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love that.
Now, Joe, very different. I would probably bring like a code names or like a Disney code names. Let's see what else. Something a little bit lighter.
Yeah, a bunch of kids running around. So
yeah, like a Give Me That, which is a game in which you are trying to write from 1 to 100 as quickly as you can, and there's one person doing that while everybody else is trying to cause a distraction or make you stop in some way, shape, or form. So you're pounding on the table, you're throwing stuff at other people. You're able to roll a die and possibly steal the paper from the other person and start writing from where they stopped.
It feels like this could escalate quickly.
Yeah.
I know what game I'm ordering from Amazon next. Like this sounds like a blast.
There's something along the line of 3,000 games released every single year, and that has just continued to grow. Like the pandemic probably had a good portion of it, but pre-pandemic, the board game space was already a $1 billion+ industry, and it looks, by 2025, it looks to be somewhere on par with like a $15 to $20 billion industry. There's a lot of joy that people can bring, and I think that kind of what it all boils down to is like we get to create joy for people. So there is thousands of games. There's a game for everybody. If you've never played a game before, there is still a game out there for you.
Yep. And don't feel
it's just
intimidated.
waiting to be discovered. That's
just play. Just have fun. And a lot of them. So we mentioned this last board game conversation we had. If you want to find a group to go play, a lot of times your LGS will have game nights where they have people together. And there's also a big up and coming, and maybe this is New Orleans because we like to drink for everything, but I think it's everywhere. But like board game bars, where literally you can go to a bar and they have a selection of board games and you just meet people, talk to people. It kind of helps that icebreaker. Like you can be socially awkward, you can be whatever. And you're like, hey, I see you have X board game. Can I play? Or hey, I'm looking for 3 people. Or if you want to play solo games, there's solo games too. But a lot of easy ways to get into playing some board games.
Yeah. Normally they're called cafes. So in New Orleans they're called bars. But normally they're board game cafes. But
that works too. I mean, ours is more fun, but whatever.
Depends on who you are, right? So we've talked a lot about like board games, like how to make them and stuff like that. So more about you specifically.
Sure.
How do you approach like game strategy and like what tactics like have worked best for you when it comes to like, beating someone else like in a game?
It changes with every single game. with some of these meteor games, like with these fun games, it's just let's see what happens, right? And when you get towards the end, then I really start to try and game the game and think through, like let's think 12 steps ahead. Even on these co-op games, like a Forbidden Island or a Pandemic, or like a Sally Face, like I'll just play through a whole bunch of rounds, and then when we get closer to the end, or I'm like, oh shit, we're about to lose, then I'll really stop and think through like chess moves of, okay, if this person does this, then I can do this, and then we can do this together, and then this thing happens. But with these meteor games, so like your Tapestry or your El Grande, it is all about paying attention very early on to what other people are doing, because people don't normally change their tactics. So if they're doing something early on, they will continue to do those sorts of things, and you can manipulate situations to make sure that the outcome is favorable for you. So a lot of quiet. If you play a game with me and I'm not talking a lot, you should be worried, because I am thinking through
Scheming.
1,000 different ways of how to beat you.
It's the game profiler over here.
So it's the same for me. First, it comes down to the group that I'm playing with, and what is the purpose of the game? Is it meant to be fun? If it's meant to just be fun, hysterical, I don't care what people are doing. I'm going to do whatever I can to get laughs out of people. Like I've played Codenames sometimes where we clearly have the dub in the bag, and next thing I know, I'm like convincing my buddy, like, okay, if he said this, it means this. I know it's not right, but I'm like, I think we should give it a try, just to get people to cut up and have a good time and things like that.
Yeah, Mysterium's another one where it's very much like that, where it's all about how you interpret visions that come from a ghost, and those visions are very esoteric looking cards, so they could be anything. And so when you're feeling confident, you're with the right group. It's more fun just to have fun.
And even like Magic, right? Magic, if I know we're there to have fun, I have certain decks that are there to have fun. If I'm trying to get dubs, I have certain decks that I know are going to put me in the best position to get W's, right? So all depends on the people you're playing with. So
if I ever go to like a cafe or a board game bar, or one of the FLGSs, I will go more for fun and for meeting people, unless I know the group that I'm coming in with. It's not necessarily fun for somebody who may be just getting into the industry, into the hobby, to come in and just be completely rocked by somebody who's been doing it for a while.
And I don't care what anybody says. We all have that one friend we absolutely refuse to lose to. It does not matter what game you put in front of me. If Josh is there, I will not lose. Will not.
It's weird. Even in a competitive or a cooperative game, I will not lose to Josh.
Yeah.
Somehow he will find a way to make sure Josh loses and he wins.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, we've played like Dead of Winter. You can both win, right? I'll convince people to kill Josh just so I can win and he'll lose.
Man, I think the funniest thing, like the funniest game I've played with the kids, is called like Don't Step in It, and it's like llama poop. So it's Play-Doh. You put a blindfold on, spin them around a bunch of times, and you like spin a wheel, and it's how many steps they have to take on this track. And if they can step through without stepping in the poop, then they win. But it's so funny just to like watch them trying to be super careful, and then their foot touches it and they just freak out. It's very fun to watch little kids play that.
It's great to be in the last few years, the understanding of what a board game has started to evolve. So like using these unconventional sort of items, right? So whether it's like a Play-Doh or it's something else, it's really fun to see where the industry has the possibility of going as like all these things start to expand. And you see a lot of games starting to do like the ARG experience where they're bringing in, phones and digital things. But I do like the ones that are like, I don't know, what about this Slinky? And like, just all these like random things that you can do, and think outside the box. And it's like, I've never thought about using a Slinky in this way. And now you have a brand new way of playing with the thing, right? So
yeah. So what are like 3 things or 3 to 5 things I want to make a board game? What constitutes a board game, a good board game versus a bad board game?
it all comes down to you need more than a roll and move. There it is. I couldn't think of the word. So a lot of the older games, right? So Sorry, even Monopoly, even though like Monopoly was like roll and move, and a lot of those older games just rely on dice and movement, and it's very hard now to make a game where you have one mechanic stick, right? Everything's been done. So if you want to make a worker placement game, that's just a worker placement game. 1,000 games have already done that, and they will always do it better than you, because they already, it's been done for the last 30, 40, 50 years. So that you're not going to create something that's better than what's already out there. What we look for now is how to combine these different mechanics in new and exciting ways. So it's a worker placement take that game, and it's like, well, what does that look like? I've never seen these two things together. Take that game seem very different than worker placement games. Also, having that parlance definitely helps, and you don't need to necessarily know every single type of mechanic that's out there, but pick up a book that says, like the 50 game mechanics in board games or something like that, right? Or something like that. Let's see what else. Art doesn't matter until the end, so it doesn't have to look pretty. Some of our best games started out with stick figure art, right? Or like, I don't draw, so I grabbing clip art of things, right? It doesn't matter early on. If you are an artist trying to make a game, great, but don't focus on just the art, because if you're focusing on just the art, then the gameplay and design is lagging behind. And there is time, right, to do all those things. In fact, I played a game at this gathering where there were about 500 cards in the game, and the way that they got the art was through Adobe Stock, right? All of their artwork came from Adobe Stock. So there is time for art. There will always be time for art.
And there's appreciation for art. Like at the end, I have so many board games where I'm like,
1,000%.
they're beautiful, right? Like I appreciate the art more than the functionality. Like I'm just like, it's a beautiful game.
But getting back to, there is time for it. So don't focus on that immediately. Focus on making sure that the game plays. Also, don't bring me a game that you've never played yourself. Like, don't come to me with a concept that you think might work. Get it out in front of your friends. They're, or your family. They're great at giving feedback, and they're probably going to be less harsh than somebody like me would be. So give yourself those times to iterate before you come to a publisher. But don't be afraid to approach somebody, right? There's 1,000 different conventions out there. Gen Con's in August. It's the largest board game convention in the United States right now. PAX U Origins is in Columbus in like, I don't know, a month and a half. There's 1,000. There's like there was just one in Nebraska that my friend hosted. I can't remember, so I can't give her a plug.
No.
But there's literally thousands, right? Go, right? See what other types of games are out there, but also don't try and chase the industry. So if you're seeing a lot of, like, probably the past 3-4 years, roll and writes have really been a massive segment. And by that, I just mean like you literally, like, you roll dice and you write things down on paper. Those are roll and writes. Rolling Realms is a great example of it. It's in the corner. Never mind, you can't see it on my screen. It's over here in the corner. But yeah, so those are huge. Maybe not the best time to start making a roll and write game, because the industry has been there and done that. So we're looking for what's next. I'm not saying you can't make the greatest roll and write game ever, and it doesn't get published immediately, but think about where the industry might be heading. So if you are seeing a certain type of game, think about, okay, well, how can I do this and add something to it?
So to summarize what I think you said,
I have no clue what I just said. I did a lot of talking.
simplicity yet complex, right?
Yes.
So it needs to be simple to understand, but you need to have multiple features and functionalities of it, right? So, and then functionalities are important. So simple yet complex. And then replayability. To me, that is a big one. I personally do not like buying games, but I know I can only play once, like Pandemic Legacy. You play it once and you have to write, you have to open, you have to, so it is
there is a place in the industry for those games. So you just said legacy games
legacy, right?
There is a place in the industry for those escape room games, those escape and unlock games.
Yep.
There is absolutely a place for those. They are harder to find a home for.
Yes. So me personally, now I've played through Pandemic Legacy and I thought it was a blast, right? It was so much fun. But for me, like replayability is so important. If I'm going to spend, X amount of dollars, I want something I can sit down and play multiple times with multiple outcomes or multiple possibilities. So simplicity yet complexity, functionality, and replayability. To me, those would be like the top three things that constitute
the
a
other
good board
thing
game.
you want to think of is like costs. So you don't want an Uno that manufacturing cost is $20 because you're just never going to be able to sell that to a marketplace.
No. Speaking of Uno, are you a pro stack of draw 2, draw 4? Or do you
1,000%, yeah. If I'm not making somebody draw 16 cards, I'm doing something.
Yeah, I hate that they came out with the rule that's like you can't do that. Well, I'm going to keep doing that because house rule this bad boy. Yeah. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So just be cognizant of the type of game you're making. Now, obviously, there is room in the industry for like I just bought a $230 game. I just bought Foundations of Rome with a couple of expansions. So it's like $180 game, and then I added some expansions to it.
Yeah, I think my most expensive game is the big set of Gloomhaven. I think that was
Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, which is right around that 150. Yeah. There is absolutely place in the marketplace for it. It's a harder publish. Also with like Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, those are the sort of you play through once sort of things.
Yep.
But yeah, so just be cognizant. If you're putting 60 minis into a box, you're going to be, that's going to be a $20 cost of goods plus $20 to $40 cost of goods. You're going to have to sell that at 5x that, so you're looking at $100 to $200 game.
And the more
is it the type of game that you can actually sell for $200, or are you pricing yourself out of the market?
Yeah, and the higher the cost, the higher my expectations go. If I drop 150 and I get a bum game, I am heartbroken.
Now, there are games that I do chase that I will pay any amount of money for. So that is, there's just certain games out there that it just doesn't matter, and you can't find them anymore. So you buy them on the secondary market, and then you end up paying through the nose for it. But
yeah, I mean, supply and demand. That's easy.
Yeah. Do you actually play that, or is that on a shelf somewhere?
No, I'll play them. Like I'm not precious. If I'm going to get a game, it's because I want to play it. And I want to play it maybe with specific people, but yeah, I'll drop $150 or $200 on a game and then break it out the second I get it. Because what's the point of having a something that just collects dust on the shelf? Unless you own, you own the landlord's game and you haven't played it and it's still mint in box, you could probably sell that for a few, $1,000 at this point. But
yeah, see, I'm a collector like MTG. I'm a collector. I have cards that I buy, they get sleeved and go into a binder. I look at them again in a few years, but they don't see decks. They don't get touched. I know I own them. I tell people
there's
I own
1,000
them.
other things to collect, Nate. You can collect Funko Pops and
do that. No, come on, join the Funko Pop community.
No. So say I want to create a board game, and you talked about it in depth, right? So create a board game, play it with family, friends, and then who do you reach out to from there? So you said IP twice, so you have to own the rights to it, right? Like I can't go.
If you're going to an IP thing, one, I don't recommend it. If you are creating a game from scratch by yourself, don't go the IP route. Now you could go, okay, it's a game in which two people are trying to conquer the world, and they do it every week, and it's a different scheme every single week. And you can make that game and then find the right publisher to be like, you know what? Pinky and the Brain do that. So you could have an IP in mind. Just don't create a game that is reliant on being only that IP. Right. So, I mean, like, if you can look behind me, like, there's Wacky Racers right there. There's some Disney games right there. There's some Scooby-Doo right there. If you're working for a publisher that has the rights to those games, great. If you don't pigeonhole yourself to just this IP because nobody will pick it up ever. Because that's just such a long process. Or you are limiting yourself to, okay, well, this company owns the rights to this, IP. I have to work with them. And if they say no, then what? Then you've limited yourself. Yeah. So even if you are thinking, okay, I want to make this really cool IP game, strip it of the IP and just make a good game that can then fit in.
Functionality and the foundational fundamentals of that game are more important.
That's right.
And then somehow add a slinky.
Well, we're running up on time. We've ran overtime in. I think we could do like a whole episode on the creation of a game, because like we talked about like the Kickstarter, and I think a lot of that, where a lot of things do that, I think the board game industry does it really well through like a company like y'all's, where they send you brainstorm, you put things together, you play test it, you put it out to the community, like you said. I think that's kind of unique to the board game world, and we could do like a whole episode on that. What is your favorite part of putting a board game together? Like the one that you love?
It's the first time I see it in front of people. So we had a bunch of games that we were playtesting last year at Gen Con, because we didn't have any games out in the marketplace yet. New games out of the marketplace yet. It was the first time I got to see people playing it. And there's no experience that compares to it. It's like watching, the first steps or whatever of your little baby game out in the world. And it is truly incredible. And I got to have that experience numerous times with Sally Face. I am really lucky to live close to Steve Gabriel, who's the creator. And so twice during the campaign, we went out into the community and like we hosted a game night at a board game place. And then we hosted just like a Sally Face celebration night at an escape room, and we got to play games and then do escape rooms, all this other kind of fun stuff. But it was really one of the first times you got to see that game out amongst fans, and just the reaction that they had to like living in that world again. There's no.
That sounds awesome. But like people like me and Joe, we're never going to get to see that, right? The closest we get is opening a board game that we have played in front of our friends who have not played, and knowing that we're going to have to teach them the rules, the game, how it works, and I'm still going to beat them. Like,
but at the end of the night, do you get satisfaction out of like, I've curated the right game, I found the right experience for this friend group to have a great time together, and like you have created a memorable night, right? Like that's the same thing.
Yeah.
I like how you worded that. You are the curator of experiences. That should be your new title.
Curator of experience.
I like that. I'll put that on my business card right now. It just says Director of Customer Experience.
It's way cooler.
I like the other one. Yeah. So this is a new thing. Not a new thing. It's been around for a while. But are you pro read the rules or pro watch videos about the rules?
I like to set it up, read the rules, and then watch the video to go, did I screw anything up? But also take with a grain of salt. Those people are doing the exact same thing. They're not always 100% correct.
Yeah. I realize a lot of games now, they're being released. If you look at like Unstable Unicorns and stuff like that, they're a lot of fun, but their rules are very broad and leave a lot of gray area. You cannot believe how many times mid-game I'll be like, we got to Google that. Like a quick Google search. It's either that or like we'll wing it to what feels right and then circle back to it at the end. So... Yeah.
No, you go like a video game and just don't read anything. Just start.
Just start playing and see what game you design out of it.
Exactly.
That is actually a ton of fun. There's a game that I played at the Gathering which literally does that. I think it's called I can't remember. Undig, Undug, Unsomething. where it is literally just components in a box, and the rule book says, "Go."
Have fun.
That's pretty
Like,
cool.
well, wait, and then it's sort of like an escape room where you like, okay, I've unearthed this game at this dig site, and I've seen these things set up in this way. What do we think this game was? And you literally build games out of just components, trying to figure out how an ancient civilization that is now dead and gone would have played this game. And there's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 different setups.
I feel like I would love that. That would be like right up my alley. So, well, Dustin, man, we appreciate you. Any last words that you want to share?
No, go play more games.
Go play more games. I mean, yeah, 100%. Games are a blast. Get people together. Play by yourself. It does not matter. Just go out, have fun, get new ones. Like I said, game bars / cafes, wherever you live and how, modest they want to be about it. But all that. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in and checking out All Things Nerdy episode 9 with Dustin Wessel, talking about board games. If you have any comments or anything, we can get them over to Dustin. Feel free to shoot them over to us. But we appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.